About 7 years ago, I married my husband, Bart, as one does with husbands. And of course, you know that the most important thing of planning your wedding is planning the honeymoon. You have got to get that perfect. For our first trip together as husband and wife, Bart and I wanted adventure without the danger, romance without the schmaltz, and sex without the... Okay, so we just wanted sex. Now, we could figure out where to get the sex. I mean, we were gonna be married, it was perfectly legal. For the adventure without danger part, Europe was just sort of screaming out to us. And for romance, what could be more romantic than the two of us alone, together, in a country where nobody speaks English? So we chose Germany. Traveling the romantic road, how perfect was that? Now, we planned the honeymoon to start the day after the wedding, and our wedding was, of course, perfect. And the wedding night, well, we were up extra special late because we had some business to take care of, if you know what I'm saying. Yeah, we had to open all our presents and make a list of what everyone got us. I mean, we were leaving the next day. We had business to take care of. Now, the next morning, the morning after, if you will, I woke up feeling kind of crappy, and at first I sort of just chalked that up to, you know, day after the wedding blues and the fact that I'd been wearing a corset for like 12 hours the day before. But as the hours wore on and as I was packing for our trip, that sick feeling took on some familiar aspects, and I knew what was going on. I called my doctor, and fortunately he was able to send a prescription to the pharmacy that was just a few miles down the road from the house I'd just moved into with Bart. I finished packing about half an hour before Bart's folks were about to arrive to take us to the airport. And I said, okay, I'll be right back. Which, you know, the pharmacy was 2 miles away. I really thought that. But when I got to the pharmacy, the pharmacist was like, oh, well, you've never been here before, so I didn't run the prescription. It's going to be another 20 minutes. Shit. I said, okay, I'm sorry. I know that was totally my fault, but if there is anything you can do to speed it up, I am about to get on a plane to go on my honeymoon. She smirked at me. I think it's because she, like me, has the sense of humor of an 8th grader, and she could figure out from my prescription what my problem was. You see, I had a urinary tract infection, yeah, a UTI, and she was probably doing the math on the whole honeymoon thing and realized that at least one of us was not going to be having very much sex. In case you don't know, yeah, UTIs make it really uncomfortable down there. So 15 minutes later, I grabbed my antibiotics in one hand and a jar of cranberry juice in the other, got in the car and headed home. I popped one of those pills in my mouth on the way home. I wanted to start getting better as soon as possible. I was not in good shape for travel. By the time we got the luggage and ourselves in the back of Bart's folks' car, I was a mess. For those of you who have never had the pleasure, let me explain to you what I was going through. First of all, with a UTI, you have to pee every second. It's like you sit down, go to the bathroom, stand up, zip your pants, and you gotta pee again. It's like this constant pressure on your bladder, except every time you do, it burns like a mofo. Just imagine hot pinchers on your privates, or don't if you don't want to, but it's terrible. And then, you know, you get a fever and chills. So I'm leaning against Bart in the back of his parents' car, and they have no idea what's going on. And he keeps whispering to me, "Are you okay?" And I keep going, "No, not really." We got to the airport late, so we had to rush through checking our bags and security, which for those of you who have ever taken an international flight know how fast that went. We got through security and had to run to our gate. And thankfully, Bart shouldered all our carry-on luggage and just sort of dragged me behind him. And we made it to the gate just before they started boarding. So we had a second to breathe and look at our boarding passes. And we were not seated together. Yeah, Bart was like literally holding me up at this point, and we were on our honeymoon. I wanted to fly to Europe with my new husband. So I went up to the always friendly stewardess, and I said, "Hi, we're on our honeymoon together. Is there any way that we could be seated next to each other?" And she barely looked up at me and said, "You should have checked in sooner." And I just sort of stood there like waiting her out, and then she kind of finally like made eye contact and was like, "Oh, all right, you two stay back when we board the plane and we'll see if there's anything we can do." I said, "Thank you so much," and we sort of backed away slowly. They boarded all the passengers and we hung back, and then finally when everyone was on, we went up there, but that very friendly stewardess was no longer there. So Bart went to his seat and I went to mine 14 rows back. I was seated next to the cutest little girl. She was like 6 or 7, and she was laying across her seat. You know, she was small enough to fit that way, and her head was on her father's lap in this sort of sleepy repose. So I sat down and smiled at her, and she gave me the dirtiest look. And then she proceeded to kick me. Repeatedly, every kick sending jolts of pain through my bladder and other parts. I looked over her at, like, "What are you doing?" And she just glared back like, "What are you gonna do, call your mom?" So then I thought, okay, I looked up at the dad like, "Are you gonna take care of Damien over here?" But he would not make eye contact. I didn't know what to do, so I thought about crying. And then I heard an angel's voice. The stewardess called out, "Where's my honeymooner?" I shot up so fast you'd think I'd sat on a tack. There was a guy willing to switch. I walked up the row, past him, and gave him a guilty look as he walked by. And then I sat down next to my new husband, held onto his arm, and did not let go for like 2 minutes, because then I had to go pee again. But the important thing is we got to fly to Europe on our honeymoon together. Now, we landed in Frankfurt right around lunchtime, and so we had no problems with the flight. We got there, we drove into town to go find a restaurant to eat, and as we're walking around downtown Frankfurt, Bart, it was like lightning had struck. He stopped and he turned to me and he said, "We're in Frankfurt. We should get Frankfurters." Do you see why I married this guy? So we found a restaurant, we sat down, and we waited, and some waitress came up to us. Now, this was the first native we were going to get a chance to talk to, right? This was very exciting. It was a German person. And now, we hadn't formally studied German, but we did listen to my little phone app on the way over. So we both had 6 hours of German under our belts. So we were prepared. The waitress comes up to us, and Bart decides to speak the native language. He says, "Hello." That's German for hello. And then he says, "Zwei für das," and she just cuts him off and says, "Two menus in English." Apparently she did not know who she was dealing with. Bart said, "Nein, an Deutsch, bitte." Yeah, that showed her. She sort of rolled her eyes and handed us each a German menu. Now, we didn't know it at the time, but everybody in Germany speaks perfect English. And they really don't like it when you speak crappy German. But we kept trying. Every place we'd go, we'd start off by speaking German, and they'd shut us down right away. And then we didn't want to be those annoying Americans who just assume everybody speaks English. So then we'd always politely, we thought, ask, "Sprechen Sie English?" To which invariably they would take insult and respond, "Ja, of course." So we'd go to a hotel and say, "Sprechen Sie English?" "Ja, of course." A beer garden, "Ja, of course." Oktoberfest, "Ja, of course." How many tickets? Our hopes and dreams of speaking the native language squashed by the end of our trip. Now, while we were there in that restaurant in Frankfurt, we were still blissfully ignorant as we perused the German menu, none of which made any sense to us. But half of the menu contained a word we did know, Frankfurter. So Bart ordered one and I ordered the other, and we confidently handed our menus back to the waitress. The other thing we didn't know is that Frankfurter doesn't necessarily mean sausage. It actually just means that it is the cuisine of Frankfurt. So when our plates arrived, Bart had some boiled eggs covered in green sauce, and I had a giant pink slab of pig. Our lunch, like most of our trip, really did not meet our expectations, but it actually turned out to be pretty tasty. And you know, our honeymoon maybe didn't have as much sex as we would have liked, but I think most people can probably say that, right? And speaking English and eating sausage was not as romantic as you might assume. But did we have the most perfect adventure together? Yeah, of course.